Play my intro.
What's up?
That'd be a much easier way to do that. I'm still learning StreamYard. What's going on, everybody? You're now watching TNF Podcast. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Click on the little bell for notifications if you want to be on the know for new content. All right. Today on the podcast, we have a very special guest. He hosts the Computer Resume podcast, which is chronologically covering all the Star Trek series. And he is a comedian in Greenville, South Carolina, also a former law enforcement officer. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Todd Davis.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to this for a while, man. Yeah,
I know, man.
This is great.
I was looking forward to doing yours, so I figured I'd return the favor, and we could talk about some stuff within the Trek universe. We can talk about stuff outside of that. So yeah, man, what's been going on with you?
Oh man, pull back the curtain a little bit. We talked a little bit before we went to air. I'm making the big push to go full time podcasting. I just opened up the Computer Resume podcast bank account. So Patreon is up. We've got we've got a couple fun little things for folks to jump in on, some rewards, some shout outs if you want, uncut versions of the episodes, some merch. We're dipping our toe in, but we are full speed, full engines to full.
Nice. Very cool, man. Yeah, it's really cool once you start to kind of get some traction, and then you start to actually enter into like the professional realm. Like I was saying, like, I didn't want to spend money on some of the stuff. And then it's like, if you really want quality, you gotta, shell out a few dollars. And I don't necessarily mind that because, and I'm sure you can relate, like, you look at stuff you did when you were younger, and you're like, that wasn't as good. And as you've gotten older, you're like, oh, that's better. Much like, any sort of trajectory with entertainment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think years ago I found some old, creative writing from when I was in junior high. And I was just like, oh wow, look at this. I remember this, and started turning pages like, oh God, this is awful.
Oh no.
I had no direction. I had no one to say, hey, that's not very good.
But I mean, again. It's one of those like, you learn from based on experience and repetition, just continually doing it, and how did you get on the trajectory towards being involved in the Greenville stand-up scene?
Well, it's funny because my Greenville comedy stand-up story actually starts in Florida. My wife and I moved down there. She got a job in she works in healthcare, and she got a pretty decent gig down in Florida. So we're moving to Florida. Her income, my income. So we're moving to Florida. But we got down there, and we moved 500 miles away from anybody we knew. So it was kind of, all right, can I sniff out another nerd? Can I find what's going on? And
you gotta fly the flags, like
exactly
Star Trek 4 shirt,
Very nice.
Failure. No, I found out today that a woman I worked with was like super into Star Trek because I wore the Star Trek 3 shirt, and I was like, nice. You just never know. It serves as a conversation piece. Anyway, continue.
So yes, while we were living in excuse me, I'm just so excited to tell you this story.
You need a drink, sir.
Yeah, I know. I should have grabbed a beer before we started. But yeah, I met this young woman, Caitlin Getler, who's a young artist down in Florida, and she and I connected. She's nerd, like me. She's into comic books. She's into nerdy animation and movies and all that stuff. So found a friend, and she had this little character that she used to draw as kind of her signature that she would put on on her pieces, and it was this little dinosaur. And I was like, oh, that little dinosaur is kind of cute. And she's like, yeah, it's kind of my signature. I was like, that's great. All I can draw is a little skeleton, and I doodled my little skeleton that I do, who's always wearing a top hat, has a cane, but skeleton. And she's like, oh, that's really cool. We should make them do something. And I said, you know what? You're right. So I left her office and went back to my office, grabbed a couple scrap sheets of paper, and wrote the first strip for what became the first Adventures on Earth with Adam and Steve.
Oh yeah, you showed this to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically it's Adam, the first man, wakes up, realizes he's alive, and is immediately eaten by a dinosaur. The dinosaur is, of course, Steve. And they become best friends after that. It's kind of like Calvin and Hobbes, but a lot more Bible jokes.
Wait, Adam and Steve, is that like a gay reference or something?
I just thought it was a funny title.
Yeah. No, it's cool. So that's really awesome, dude.
So how that led to stand up was we were, it's obviously, if you didn't guess by the title, it's a comedy. First Adventures on Earth with Adam and Steve. And I had no experience in formally writing any sort of comedy. I've always been a big fan of comedy, stand-up, film, improv, fan of all of it.
Sure.
But just never, just as the onlooker, never took part. So while I was working at this college with Miss Caitlin Getler, there was the English department put on a seminar, an all-day seminar for the kids of writing. And so they invited a local to come and host basically a comedic writing workshop, a comedic performance workshop. And then at the end of the day, the kids who wanted to take part in a show could. And I was just interested in getting the information because, like I said, no experience writing comedy at all. So I went to the English teacher that was head of the whole shindig and said, hey, I'm working on this comic book, gave her the whole spiel. And it's just like, hey, can I just come and listen to the seminars, just get the information? She goes, yeah, absolutely. No problem. And then you want to take part in the stand-up show at the end, right? I was like, no, not really. I just kind of want to watch, just want to listen, just want to glean the information. Oh, come on, it'll be fun. It's like, no,
that's how it all starts. You get wrangled into it, and you're
but she pressed, and oh, come on, you're gonna have a great time. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Okay, fine, I'll do it. So went home, jotted down a few ideas, tried to put them in some sort of joke format from whatever I knew. What I didn't know was after, all the seminars and all the things, the show that we were going to be doing was a showcase, and it was a contest. So here I am, the guy that works at the college competing with all these like 18 and 19-year-old kids.
Oh, Lord.
And so I went up there, did my thing. I guess interacting with the host throughout the day, he was looking at everybody and seeing what the lineup would be. So he put me last. And for those who are not as familiar with stand-up comedy, last is, kind of like music. If you're the headliner.
Right.
So he let me go last.
Oh, Lord.
And I did my stuff and just got through it. Went to leave, head off stage, and he's coming back. He's the host. So he's coming back on stage and he goes, stick around. Okay. So stuck around, and then they were like, this is when I found out it was a contest. He brought up the half dozen that he really, really liked, which included me and five other kids, one of which was in a wheelchair. We'll get to that in a minute. So he brings us back up and he goes, all right, so applaud for your favorite. And he does the hand over the head thing. And he narrowed it down to 3, me, this other kid, and the girl in the wheelchair, who she's one of my good friends now, but she killed it. This is just a rabbit trail here. When she got up to do her stuff, of course, she's in a wheelchair, but she rolls up, takes the microphone, sets the stand aside, and goes, you'll forgive me if I don't get up. I was like, That's killer. Like everybody else can just go home. Like that wins.
Yeah, right. That's
But
great.
anyways, it turns out that I won. So the guy who worked for the school ended up beating all the kids, and they brought me this god awful, just huge bouquet of flowers. Gave it to me next to the girl who's in the wheelchair. I was so embarrassed.
That's that's
so. Postscript to that story. One of the prizes that I won was 5 minutes at the local open mic. Okay, great. So, because I was working nights, I had to take off work.
Wait, you won that? They usually have to like fucking give that shit away.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was great at the time.
Oh, wow. Okay, continue.
So, I go to the show and I see people filing in, and I've wrote a couple new things and, sort of studied up a little bit more. And so I, toyed around with a little bit of the structure, and I think one or two people went ahead of me. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Mr. Todd Davis. And I get up there and I'm prepared. I've got my opener. I've got 3 bits. Each bit has 3 jokes. Like, I've got a decent closer. Like, I'm prepared, man.
Yeah.
I get up there. I do my opener. Crickets. Nothing. Not even a boo. Not even a snicker. Not even a, oh, look at, bless his heart. Nothing like that. Crickets. I said, okay, maybe it's just that opener. So I tried another opener. Crickets. I was like, okay, we're done with openers. Let's go into the first bit. I do the first joke of the first bit. Crickets. Second joke of the first bit. Crickets. After that second joke, I just went, well, none of this is working, so bye, and put the mic back in the stand, walked off stage. The host, who was not ready, hurried up on stage, grabbed the mic. She goes, hey, is this your first time? I said, it might as well be. and that exactly that reaction, the entire room erupted in laughter. And I was like,
you saved
fuck
it.
all of you. So my first stand-up comedy experience is, it is what it is, but juxtaposed to my second comedy experience, I kind of ran the gambit right off the bat, which is actually kind of a good way to go. You kind of want to get those extreme highs and extreme lows and really kind of zero in on like, okay, and this is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, Schulte and Scoville, they like got me wrangled into it, and the first night was like beginner's luck. I had some decent reactions, and I think we were in Columbia and they knew a bunch of the comics and whatnot. And then like maybe the next 2 or 3 nights was kind of whatever, and then I think the last 2 nights I was just like, I'm not even gonna, I was not prepared for this at all,
It's a lot of people. I remember seeing after that initial first wave of the pandemic, a few mics opened back up, and man, there was a flood of people who'd been sitting around watching Netflix comedy for the duration. And when they opened up, they're like, you know what? Damn it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it. We're going to check this off my bucket list. And it was so many people coming in going, well, I've been watching Netflix comedy for 6 weeks. I think I know what I'm doing.
Oh, I mean, Lord.
My special is probably going to happen in about 2 weeks.
Oh, geez. And that's everybody in LA. They think they're just going to move out there and get like a comedy special or something. And
and it was very much delusional. A lot. Yeah. So many people don't realize stand-up comedy specifically is such a exercise in repeated rejection. I mean, I guess the actors kind of get a good sense of that. It's constantly, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too white, you're too whatever, you're too whatever.
But to contrast acting versus comedy, like, like take auditions, for example. Like you're auditioning for like the casting agent, director, whatever. But with stand-up comedy, you're performing to an audience all the time. Like I mean, like an organic audience. Like with acting, you can get other opportunities to audition and whatnot. But like with stand-up comedy, like when you're there performing and you got that energy back and forth and you're bombing, you're just like, ugh.
It's tough. I mean, it will definitely, in terms of writing, in terms of performance, in terms of professionalism, like it toughens you up real quick, or you just don't survive in it. It's, once you understand the repeated rejection element of it, and you kind of get past the I'm just going to wing it phase. Yeah, if you can get those two things behind you, it's smoother sailing. I won't say it's smooth, but it is definitely much smoother.
Right. Now, okay, so what had originally brought me to your podcast was my love for Star Trek, and
Yes.
we got to talk about Enterprise, which I'm really looking forward to doing the episode for TOS too. That should be fun.
Oh yeah.
But so you like new Trek, right?
Yeah, I'm a fan of anything well made where people are trying hard.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
I personally, I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not really a fan of it at all, and I'm trying to understand people that actually enjoy new Trek. Like, I want to hear some defense of why you enjoy it and why you feel like it's uh worthwhile or worth watching as far as it being
Sure.
part of the Star Trek canon.
Yeah, absolutely. For those folks who are not as well acquainted, there's a couple different eras of Star Trek. Of course, you have the original series, which usually includes the original series, the animated series, and those older original crew films. We're talking
Right.
1 through 6.
6, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you count Generations,
Right, if you
partially,
count
but
Generations, yeah.
whatever.
The next phase after that is commonly known as the TNG era. It
Right.
was Star Trek: The Next Generation with Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard. Almost everybody, even if you're not into Star Trek, knows who that is.
Who he is. Yeah.
But it was his whole crew, which led to Deep Space Nine, which also overlapped with Voyager, and then after Voyager was Star Trek Enterprise, which is actually a prequel and takes place before TOS.
Right.
But once Enterprise ended, we had
years.
Yeah, it was a long time. I want to say 2017 when
no, you're talking about the Kurtzman.
Oh
Abrams
yeah,
Trek?
I'm going with Prime Universe canon. But yes, 2009 is of course when JJ Abrams.
Yeah.
JJ Abrams took his stab at the franchise. And to be honest, I mean, there's a lot of different schools of thought on that. A lot of people are like, "Oh, why? This is pointless." But I think they did a good job of explaining that it's an alternate reality, which is why you have 2 Spocks, blah, blah, blah. They did it. They could have done a lot worse.
Sure. But I don't mind 09 Trek so much. I think it's, for if you're showing it to a new generation, and, Red Letter Media kind of touched upon this, like, it's not bad, like it's a fun little, like, just punchy adventure where they destroy planets and shift the course of Star Trek canon, but yeah, I mean, I don't mind so much the fact that it's an alternate universe. You can look at Prime Universe, Kelvin Universe, whatever. But yeah, no, that first film is fun. I saw it in theaters and I was like,
yeah, I did too. And the wife dug it, which, if anybody out there is nerdy enough to have listened to the commentary for 2009 Star Trek, that was actually part of their goal, was like, hey, how do we get our girlfriends, or how do we get our wives into this?
You get Chris Pine.
Well, yeah. Well, they
love him.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that, one of the things that they cited was really having the looking at the twin suns moment, to make the Star Wars reference, but that's I think is roughly how they phrased it. They gave them that moment. It's not the lightsaber fights, it's the struggle within.
Right.
You know, and of course, I think they, you know, for them to hit folks with that right off the bat with the birth of James T and the death of George Kirk, of course, a lot of it happening through, you know, the mother's eyes and, you know, hearing her loved one die
Right.
over the comm while she's giving birth. You know,
Yeah.
you know, if you weren't on board when you sat down after that scene, you're in. You're
Oh
pretty
yeah.
much on
No,
board for the whole
they
thing.
really do a good job. And I don't know. I feel like that's kind of, and it's fucking dark as shit in here. That's better.
Hey, there you go.
Hey, here I am, 20 minutes into the stream. No, I had it small, so I couldn't really see how much light it was putting out. So
I gotcha.
anyway, no, I just wanted to be like I'm in a noir, like, you know, Murnau, like German expressionist film.
Of course.
No,
But you know,
so
the sequel
continue.
and the sequels to the 2009, you could go back and forth all day on those. I have my thoughts about Into Darkness, you know, rehashing Khan, but not doing a very good job of keeping that from us, you know, not giving us the big shocker, you know,
Right.
moments that were, you know, there in Wrath of Khan.
Did we need it though, is the question, because like, you know,
it-
he's like, my name is Khan, and that's an earth-shattering reveal to us as the audience because we already know who Khan is. But
we
like
know who
Kirk
Khan
and
is.
Spock are going to be like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah,
Like, who
they
cares,
they have nothing to gauge that on. They
Right.
don't know because Space Seed didn't happen. That's what I'm having to tell myself with Into Darkness is Into Darkness is not
yeah,
just
it's
not
possible that it couldn't
strictly
have happened. Yeah.
yeah, it's not strictly remaking Wrath of Khan. They also mixed in Space Seed with that. So that's if you kind of have that in mind, it's like it
It's convoluted
the
at
waters
that
get a
point.
little less muddy, I think.
Sure. Well, they always kind of play fast and loose with the time travel and like alternate universe stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't know. See, like JJ and crew, to me, I think kind of undid the fabric a little too much, you know? And I'm just like,
How so?
well, in that, you
Or
know,
clarify.
well, okay, yes, it's an alternate universe. I feel like they did that because they're lazy and because they don't know the past canon of Star Trek as well as, you know, JJ's things was Star Wars, you know. That's kind of what he knew.
That's been
So
well
they're like,
documented.
how do we circumvent this problem? Oh, let's just make a new universe. And they know Beam Me Up Scotty, and they know the Starship Enterprise and stuff like that, you know. But it's
here's let me just
Go
weigh
ahead,
in
go ahead.
on just that. So I think because at that time reboots were in full swing. Reboots, remakes, they were in full swing, and a lot of people the studio was probably, hey, let's reboot Star Trek.
Right.
The fans were probably like, hey, can you not reboot Star Trek, please?
I didn't mind it so much because it was a breath of fresh air.
Well, like, you know, I've met so many people through my show, Computer Resume Podcast, available now wherever you get your podcast. And a lot of them have said, you know, 2009 was my entry point. And it was like, okay. And that led to like the overall fandom of like, oh, there's 50 years of other Trek I can enjoy.
Never heard that from anyone.
Really?
You know, I mean, because like you and I have grown up on older Treks. For somebody to be introduced through the series through 2009, clearly it did its job. You know, like clearly, like somebody was impacted by it, and you know,
right.
It's one of those things where you find something new and then you go back and you look at all the old or anything that influenced that, you know?
Right. And it's kind of like Chris Nolan, you know, on the Batman movies. It's a tough balancing act between appeasing your financiers in the studio and making something you're proud of and that the fans actually enjoy.
Right.
And, you know, especially I'll just as one example, you know, he didn't want to have Robin in the Batman movies. I get it. It's, you know, that's your taste. That's fine.
Yeah.
But he figured out a way to do it and not do it. So he is, but he isn't.
Right.
And then,
yeah.
And then similarly, they're like, well, he's going to kill Batman. And studio's like, hey, can you not kill Batman? So he figured out a way to kill Batman and not kill Batman. So,
Oh, interesting.
when it comes to the Star Trek things, it's kind of, hey, we want to revive Star Trek, which usually means reboot. And any actual fans with JJ was probably like, hey, that's not a good idea. The thing that they're asking us to do, we need to find a better, different way to do it. And that's what they did. They're like, okay, you want something new. The fans are still kind of hung up on the older stuff, so let's find a middle ground.
So
and
do
make
you
some
think the
money.
studios were the ones that emphasized the whole, like I'm sure Into Darkness was just like they wanted to remake Wrath of Khan, and JJ may have been like, but see, there's
See,
only
so many of those questions, was that a writing issue? Was that a directorial issue?
Right.
Was that an editing issue? Was that something from the actors? Was it something from another producer? Was it something from the fans? Like, did they misinterpret fan fan pleas, or did they just
critiques.
find the one and was like, oh, that's the idea, we're gonna go that direction.
Yeah.
But in terms of what they did, we needed the big shocker, because Khan, Wrath of Khan, the title kind of gives it away, but like when he shows up, it's a big deal because of Space Seed a long time ago.
Right.
In this, they, like you mentioned earlier, they don't really have prior knowledge to that. So again, they are giving them a remake, but not just remaking Wrath of Khan, because you can't just remake Wrath of Khan.
So pause for a minute.
Okay.
My entry point was computer pause. No, my entry point to Star Trek was Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan.
Okay.
And I had never seen Space Seed. So, that to me was like, okay, so who the fuck is this guy? Who cares? Like,
sure.
But I mean, my friends had to explain to me, look, he came back. He was in a previous episode in the old series. And so I was like, okay, well, yeah, if you know that, it has somewhat of weight, but you still know when like the music flares up and like Chekhov's like, holy shit, who the fuck is this guy? I mean, he knows him, and like, but the audience is like, huh, who? But he still has this like ominous presence,
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I know they had initially wanted Benicio del Toro, who would have been a good choice. He's a good
would have been
actor.
a better choice than Cumberbatch, I think.
I don't know. I honestly,
here's the thing.
It's all in the voice, though. It's all in the voice.
Right. Here's the thing. Like, Khan is a Sikh. Khan is supposed to be played by somebody of like Indian or like Pakistani, Middle Eastern descent, right? But they got Ricardo Montalban, and he kind of passes for it, So like, but like, he's Latin, and so like Benicio would be more akin to Montalban, but they're still missing they keep missing the target when it comes to like appropriate, because that even kind of like, I'm like, they couldn't get an Indian dude, like.
True. I think, what little I know of Bollywood, it's not the joke that everybody makes it out to be. Like, it's really good. You've got some really good performers over there.
Sure.
I think if I were to play devil's advocate here of try to make sense of the casting issue of Khan, taking it that direction, that he's a Sikh and from, Asia, India, that area of the world that used to be ruled by the British.
Yeah, I guess it's true. Yeah, I mean, there could be some sort of like cross-cultural, integration or something like that.
Jean-Luc Picard, a Frenchman with a British accent.
And then the only time he ever uses a French accent, it's so hammy and like over the top, So that's really what I want to talk about. Like, I wanted to talk about Discovery, which I dialed out of about halfway through the first season. And then also, Picard. And I haven't seen any of Strange New Worlds. And I watched the first episode of Lower Decks, and I couldn't do it, man. I couldn't do it. I was like, oh, this is like blowing up my brain. So, Yes, any of the new televised Trek.
Where would you like to start, sir?
Where would I want to start? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we can go chronological.
Well, see, Discovery to me, like, I was not a fan of Sonequa Martin Green on The Walking Dead. I thought she was almost like a blank. She was as much of a blank slate on Discovery as she was on that show, because, like, you know, in Discovery, she's like, just you can't have like a Vulcan or a Vulcan acting person as like your protagonist. They just don't work. They're too like Abbott and not enough Costello, you know. They're too flat,
right.
you know.
Okay.
And so like, but she had one facial expression on Walking Dead, and it was just like, like just bewilderment, you know. And I'm like, man, this chick is one note, you know. So whenever they said she was cast as the lead in that, I was like, I don't know. And then it was just more of the same, you know. And then just like everybody is angry and everybody's an asshole. And like, you know, I know it's supposed to be like they're in an alternate universe or whatever, but like it just it doesn't hook you, you know. And then like Picard.
Well, hold on.
Okay, so let's
address them one show at a time.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So
that's kind of my synopsis of it, and it's just there's no likable characters, and okay, this will be the final point to kind of drive my feelings on it. They hate white men. They hate them. Okay. Every white man, and this has become a recurring trope in cinema, I've noticed. Like Shape of Water was like this. Scream 5 was like this. They hate white men. All the white men are crazy, or they are effeminate, or just straight up gay. They try to make them look emasculated or just completely unhinged. And I'm like, why do we need to do this? You know, it's okay to have like representation, but like, what's wrong with the cis white male? Like, why are we not the cis white heterosexual male? Why are we not included in this inclusion? You know?
Okay, yeah. You know, I think part of it is it would be foolish. It would be foolish to think, although it's usually the only one we see, but it's foolish to think that something as big as the United Federation of Planets, Starfleet, that it's ridiculous of us to think that it's only human captains. We know that's not true.
Sure.
There's all kinds of captains. And we've seen over the years, just because they're a different species, you know, from a different planet, in terms of skin color, features, whatever. If they paint them green, they paint them green. You know, if they're painted blue, they're painted blue. Like,
right.
But there's obviously different shades of blue, and we've seen that in Discovery. We've seen that. I know you haven't seen Strange New Worlds, but there's, you know, a little bit of that in there too.
Yeah, maybe sell me on that later.
Yeah, it's because it's all it's all coming. Yeah, it's all coming. Man.
Okay.
So in terms of Sonequa Martin Green and her role as Captain Michael Burnham, she
is a captain now.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Spoil it for me. I have no intentions of watching it, but like, yeah, they said she was a first officer, and then like, this was the thing that was so implausible to me, was that the fact that she was demoted and then they just like kept her on just because, you know, like I was like,
yeah, for folks who so spoilers, everything Star Trek from here on out. If you hadn't gotten that, we're gonna be talking about it.
Spoiler alert, new Star Trek.
So you know, I think I was first, unless, you know, again, I don't have Miss Green's, you know, CV memorized or anything like that. So, but I first became aware of her probably Walking Dead, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Walking Dead is such a specific thing where I wonder if performance may have been influenced by directing. So Greg Nicotero directed a lot of that. He's known as a special effects guy. Not that he can't direct, but that's not his primary focus. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, you know, was she getting and this big thing comes around the corner and there it is. What do you do? So a lot of those
I did a Kirkman show actually, and the director that she did the one episode. Remember the episode? Oh, what was his name?
I stopped watching after Carl died. If that's a good
Oh no,
compare
I was
with
way
how long
before
it's
that.
been.
I was way
Okay.
before that, I think. No, Morgan. Morgan was in the jail with a
Okay.
guy that was like he had pet deer and then he had like zombies penned up.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, the director of that episode directed me in a Kirkman show, Outcast, and she
Oh,
was
cool.
fantastic. She did episodes of Twin Peaks and Knots Landing, and like she was super like, okay, you know, I had to be possessed by a demon and everything. So anyway, with back to Sonequa Martin Green.
Yes. I think what we are seeing, because again, although um Deep Space Nine had a good bit of it, Voyager had this a little bit as well, and Enterprise towards the end of the series had this small chunks of serialized storytelling.
Okay.
The idea of a truly serialized Star Trek narrative had not been done.
No.
There were 2-3 part arcs. That's about as much as we got,
Right.
and maybe an overarching season story, but that
Not
was
really
about
until
it.
DS9.
Yeah, DS9, TNG dipped its toe in the water on a
Sort
couple
of.
things here and there.
Yeah.
But they ended up becoming more Easter eggy, if I can
Right.
make a
Right.
term there. It's just kind of like, hey, remember this person from season 2? Well, here
Well,
they are in season
I think
4.
one of the best things that Star Trek did was they had three shows going contiguously. You know, like
Yeah.
TNG was in season 7, and then I think DS9 was in season 3, and then Voyager was like in season 1. And so at one point, the Paramount lot was filming 3 different Star Trek shows, which is
Oh
pretty
yeah.
wild if you think about it.
Yeah. So all that to say, with a serialized narrative, if you look at Worf, every now and then he's like, well, peace is what matters in the Federation. And then the next episode, he's like, we should murder them all. And it's so there's a little bit of inconsistency there. And,
Sure.
I'm picking on Worf, like they did that with all the characters, including Picard.
Yeah.
So, this would be the first time that a character arc has to sustain. So we're talking about not necessarily as harsh range of emotions. We're talking about a progression of emotions. So it's going to seem like, well, she starts off, she was, again, spoilers, everybody. So she starts off as the adopted sister of Spock.
Right.
So raised primarily by Vulcan parents. So obviously she's very Vulcan-y. She's not a Vulcan, but she's got a lot of Vulcan tendencies, which are
Right.
no tendencies. A very
Right.
bland haircut and stoic face all the time. But we see her, because we get, I think there's a large number of folks saying she's crying all the time, or or dull all the time. I've heard trust me, I've heard a lot of them.
Yeah.
So I think with this, we're seeing someone in a high position. She was second in command of the Shinzo,
Right.
and for her to have this fundamental understanding of a part of Klingon culture and to be ignored by her superior, I think that is universal. I think I felt that in the last month
What happened?
with my job. You make suggestions. They're so obviously the right way to go, but the person with their finger on the button goes, no, we're going to do this thing.
Yeah.
And it's worse and more
I get you.
expensive.
It's
your
like
opinion doesn't
when you
matter.
know that you are more knowledgeable than others regarding
Right.
a certain subject, and they still kind of write you off anyway. Yeah, it's a little
Exactly.
frustrating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we got Michael Burnham at the beginning of Discovery, who's in a fairly high position. She's first officer, and she knows this thing. She's ignored, and she makes that first, what I consider to be the first reemergence of her humanity, was, I'm right, you're wrong, fuck you, you're putting everybody in danger. and she doubles down and causes a mutiny. It ends up not landing in her favor, and she's of course demoted, she's imprisoned, the whole thing. Well, it's no secret that law enforcement agencies, military, hire people that aren't soldiers. They're called contractors. You got everything from engineers and
is that what she is
mechanics
essentially? But she wears the Starfleet uniform.
She was brought back in as a specialist, which she still rocked the jumpsuit for a while, but she did eventually get a standard issue, a modified standard issue. It's each show has their way of indicating rank by just the uniform itself.
Right.
Similar thing with Discovery, although it's a little bit more subtle, is the gold, silver, bronze. And, if they're moving fast enough or the lighting's a certain way, it all looks the same. But you can definitely see the progression of Enterprise to Discovery to what will eventually be, new TOS or original TOS, OG TOS.
Okay. Yeah,
but
I mean, like
that's a comment on costumes. In terms of watching Sonequa Martin Green play Michael Burnham, you've got time to let those emotional beats land, because again, it's not, well, we got to wrap this story up in 45 minutes. It's no, we got to wrap this story up in 12 hours. So we're getting to see those emotions hit and land and stay. I've been through some stuff in my life. I'm sure you have. I'm sure most of the audience has. Yeah. It doesn't just go away. It's, some of these things are, if you're able to, hear, see, and empathize at least a little bit, you'll see like, oh, this was, Michael Burnham, to be raised by Vulcan parents meant she lost her own parents. And there's a good chance she may have seen it, for dramatic effect, but she may have seen it. Imagine how traumatizing that would be for somebody.
Right.
That's going to damage you. Like, look, there's no mentally healthy stand-up comedian. There's not. You can have arguments. You can have arguments for who is the healthiest, but there's none of them that are really mentally healthy.
I don't think Bill Burr would be the healthiest at all. He's probably towards the bottom of the rung.
Right. So in terms of the structure, I've talked about the structure in terms of, it being serialized, and we're watching a character, not only the narrative serialized, but the character arc serialized. So, in terms of the look of Discovery, I mean, let's not forget the last thing that made Paramount a lot of money was a certain looking Star Trek, J.J. Abrams.
True.
So that's where they got a lot of that design. Plus, do you really want to see another Star Trek that looks exactly like what they were doing 20 years ago? I mean,
no,
it progressed from the 60s to the 80s, and it progressed into the 90s and 2000s. But there were clear visual differences, even down to camera movements. I'm not just talking about costumes and sets. Like,
I'm not in opposition to progressing with the times. I guess what I am more in favor of is less is more. Like when they've got all those starships on screen at once, and DS9 to me was like the beginning of the end as far as that's concerned, because like they've got the most interesting stuff to me was the Enterprise and the Reliant, the Enterprise and Krug's Bird of Prey, like just one ship squaring off against another ship, or maybe two ships or whatever, a lot of this stuff is just visual overkill for me, where I'm just like, what is going on? Like there's, it's just like a bombardment of stuff just coming at you all at once. And so that to me, it's distracting, like more than anything. It's hard to focus.
Yeah, I can see that. There's times where, you're looking at, okay, now who are these people? Oh, they're the Vulcans. Okay, so let's see. The Vulcans, they have weird haircuts, pointy ears. Got it. Okay. And now who? Oh, so here we go. Here are the Vulcans. No, those are Romulans. Sorry? They look exactly alike. No, it's, we're coming to a point where technology and filmmaking techniques, especially when it comes to, I say filmmaking, but like it's television, but it's very much the same thing they do in
Right.
film nowadays.
Sure.
We're coming to a point where we're able to have this massive range of detail and color and big sweeping arcs with the camera, stuff that they didn't dream of in the original Star Trek.
Right.
Very static shots, very blank walls, like not a lot of texture to anything.
Right.
So as things have progressed, the look of the shows is going to change.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's kind of a certain charm and quaintness to like the old aesthetics of like the old shows.
Sure. Now, part of the way that these look and being able to keep things straight, because like I said, I have trouble with it too. Look at those Discovery uniforms. If you're not really paying attention to gold, silver, bronze, it can get a little confusing.
Sure.
And again, the flip side to the coin being everything's in high def, and this stuff looks great, and it does. It really does look
no,
great.
it's a good. They're good looking shows. Don't get me wrong.
But they're making a show that is kind of, in terms of visual attractiveness, they're definitely not playing down, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, okay, we've got high def, so you're going to have to pay attention a little bit, just a little bit, to really catch, like, okay, blue skin, got it. Okay, green skin. Okay, we know who those people are. Oh, I can actually, high def, I can actually tell the difference between gold, silver, and bronze.
Sure.
That might not be everybody. Or, again, depending on the writing, if they haven't solidified that character in your mind, then yeah, you're going to, if they pop up again and you've forgotten who they are, then that comes back to writing,
Yeah, and like I've always noticed that with almost every Trek series, it takes about 2 seasons for it to really ramp up, like
that's about an average. Yeah.
You look at like season 3 of TNG, that's when it starts into like the best of both worlds. Wait, no, is that 4?
That's 4.
Okay, well, even 3 started to amp up and get really good, and then you had DS9 where it was the 3rd season they meet the Dominion and the Jem'Hadar, and then the 3rd season. Well, no, I think it was 4th season of Voyager. They found the Borg, right? It was like the end of the 3rd season, beginning of the 4th, something like that.
I believe so. Yes.
And I don't know. I'd love to say that I can would be able to stay invested in these, but like I was out of Discovery after like 6 episodes, like I said, and then Picard, my buddy was dragging me like I was kicking and screaming and didn't want to watch it, and I did, and I don't know, there's a certain like je ne sais quoi to like the older Trek that just, I feel like new Trek is just, what is it missing,
Yeah, it's I will say that they have turned especially Discovery. I was about to say Trek, but I was like, well, that's not necessarily the case. But anyway, they've definitely gone with turning Discovery, having Discovery structured to be a water cooler show, getting everybody to gather around. Hey, did you see this week's? They wanted that again. They wanted it, which creates buzz, which is essentially marketing. But looking at I'm sorry, I had an edible before we got started.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I'm here, but it's I'm having to reach for
this is funny because we can seg into this later, because it was funny. I was gonna, when we did your podcast, I had my bowl and I was like, oh, is this okay? And you're like, oh, it's fine. Because in my mind I was like, man, I hope like somebody like law enforcement doesn't watch this, like the cops, and I'm like, oh, he is the cops. I was like, oh shit, like I was totally like caught off guard. I was like, so how did you get? Oh, I was in law enforcement, and I was like, I hope he doesn't have any of his cop buddies watching. Anyway, took an edible. Where were we going? We were talking about
the look of Discovery and
basically
the fact that they turned it again into a water cooler show is kind of the point. It's, you know, when Lost was out, ABC's Lost, I got into it just after season 1 because a buddy of mine bought the DVDs and I was just like, well, you know, just let me borrow those and I'll catch up. And when I would talk to folks who weren't watching the show after, you know, being invested in it for, you know, multiple seasons, I said, look, do yourself a favor, just get disc 1, season 1. If you're not on board after that, you can bounce and you'll be fine. But if it's just not your cup of, you know, your cup of tea, it's then you're not going to dig it. So with Discovery, this was the first step back into regular televised, albeit streaming television, you know, Star Trek in production with CBS doing it. Okay, here we go. Let's see how it goes. So, you know, they tried something new with, you know, integrating the much more advanced special effects, but also integrating the serialized narrative structure, and, you know, trying something new. And I think in large part it worked because, again, it's something we hadn't seen. We love these characters anyway, and we know their stories backwards and forwards over multiple seasons. So they're like, you know what? Let's lean into that. You know, it's not a bad way to go. Now, again, making it serialized is not as accessible as episodic. You know, you talk about, well, pretty much everything up to Discovery was pretty episodic for the most part. We talked a little bit about that at the top of the episode. But when when you're in that position where it's like, look, it's Star Trek, so we're pretty sure it's going to make money. Do we want to try something different? Well, if we're making money, who cares? So it may have been that simple, or that may have been a creative decision. In either event, smart move.
Sure.
Try it. Why not? If it doesn't work, then you go back.
Yeah,
or you fire the writer's room, or do whatever. But look,
to me, it you know, and like you and I think had discussed, or I had sent something to you in that, like, you know, you had made a statement saying like Star Trek has always been woke, and I disagreed with you in that, you know, I felt that Star Trek has always been progressive. The Federation was the gold standard for conduct and how people should, you know, live in the universe. And the problems were always reflected in the alien cultures, right? So this is where I think kind of Trek misses the plot, is that New Trek is that, you know, all I'm trying to like put my finger on it. I think it's just I can't.
Well, it's, you know, in looking at, and I think I had started getting into this a little bit earlier, but I think, you know, it's ridiculous of us to think that there's only, like I said, only one species or only one race, you know, only one sex, you know, captaining a ship, you know. Now primarily the first big two, white dudes. So it's, you know, okay, let's get a different perspective. You know, that's kind of where the Gene Roddenberry type future is kind of like, hey, we listen to each other. We take things from all perspectives, be it technology or stories, you know. And I think that's been reflected in Star Trek pretty well.
I think, and I'm fine with like representation of like different, you know, different races and whatnot. Obviously, it's Star Trek. It's the, you know, you're going to encounter different races and different, you know, aliens and stuff like that. Yeah. My issue is the fact that, like I said, you got Lorca, fucking crazy. You've got what's his name? The fucking engineer guy.
Scotty? Oh, he's not
Discovery engineer.
Oh, Stamets.
I was gonna say you can't remember his name.
No.
And then the medical guy's Latin, but you know what I'm saying. He's got a little relationship with him or whatever. And then like you take Picard. only white dude in the show is Picard, and then the only other one was what, Maddox or whatever, and he dies, and then they're stringing along Picard like he's like a completely like hapless, just witless, like old man, and he's just like befuddled, and everybody else is on their game. Everybody else is completely like, Rios is kind of like sloppy or whatever, but like, Picard is just like completely befuddled and confused, and they're like, it's all your fault, it's all your fault, you're a failure, and like, to me, it's, I get it, people change, and I even defended the Next Generation movies, and people are like, well, why would Picard like be so aggressive towards the Borg? And I'm like, think about it like this, right? Okay, they met him once and they kind of caused some trouble. Then they met him and they kidnapped him, and then they met him and they were like rogues or whatever, and he's just like, I'm tired of these assholes. You know what? The line must be drawn here. I'm tired of the Borg. They've had enough chances, and now they just keep, and so that to me was understandable and plausible, but the fact that like, he's just completely like, he's so out of character. And when I said, did a bad French accent, that's where he did it, and I was like, what is he doing, like,
there's, Patrick Stewart is an amazing actor, amazing performer. Sure. I don't think anybody would debate that.
Yeah.
I have my issues with Picard season 1. Season 2, again, time travel, Star Trek time travel is always kind of a tricky thing, especially when you start taking into account alternate universes.
Right.
So that gets even weirder. But looking at what I loved about Picard, which I'm sure is probably echoed by more than a few fans, the calm, steady, stern but loving voice that I needed as a young man,
right,
was Captain Jean-Luc Picard. So in looking at what we truly loved about Picard, were those moments of doubt where he would talk it through with Guinan, or moments of repressed passion that he had with Beverly Crusher, or talking to the counselor who's clearly
since he loves Data so much.
Data. Yeah. The counselor is much younger, but Picard's relying on her, and Data kind of becoming the son Picard never had. We get to, there's not only that interaction, but then the more parental familial action between him and Wesley Crusher. And there's all
Data's almost like Pinocchio and Picard is Geppetto.
Right. Yeah, exactly. His interactions with Will is clearly him trying to impart some wisdom to a younger version of himself.
Sure.
I think I've mentioned it more than once on Computer Resume podcast, available now wherever you get your podcast. Is that there's an idea of storytelling where this character is embodied by 3 different persons, and the prevailing Star Trek theory, at least in my own head, is that Picard, Will Riker, and Wesley Crusher are 3 different versions of the same character. So to see those interactions with that in mind, kind of puts a different spin on it. Those conversations become a little more deeper, and we peel the onion a little bit more. Sure. So, okay. So what's up next? New Trek? Are we going to? So we talked Picard.
I was just saying one more thing I wanted to talk on with New Trek was the insertion of Stacey Abrams, a politician, into Trek. That had never been done before. That was completely unprecedented. And
there's been some notable
Federation.
They brought her in as president of the Federation. Yeah. It's no secret Star Trek has commented on the thoughts and feelings and events of the day.
Right.
Most good sci-fi does. It's a cautionary tale, just veiled in sci-fi laser guns and aliens. That's pretty much it.
But Stacey Abrams, though, like, that's a clear endorsement. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's we
could debate who said whose idea was it? The debate that was had, if any, why they pulled the trigger. Was it from the writer? Was it from the director? Was it a producer? Was it something from the studio? Doubtful, but that suggestion could have come from anywhere. And depending on how you sell it, like a comedian,
it has to be
like a
truthful,
comedian.
though.
If a comedian comes up, look, rape jokes. There are certain comedians that can tell rape jokes.
Yeah,
A lot of comedians
I've heard
can't tell rape
ones.
jokes.
Yeah, it's all in the presentation, you know.
Yeah.
It's,
So, whoever came up with the idea said, hey, you know who we should get? And okay, fine. They could have gotten anybody.
Yeah, but
it's inconsequential. But if you
no, it's not though, because what I'm saying is like they made her the president of the federation in 2024, right?
For a scene, man, for a scene.
No, I know, but I'm saying like she's the one who's talking about defunding the police, and she's got an armed security guard in the show and in real life. I'm like, this is ridiculous, And here they've got this woman that wants to like disarm everybody in the country and just have security for herself, and they've got her as the president of the federation. You kidding me? Like that pissed me off. I was like,
look,
I was like, there's no way I'm watching New Trek ever again because of that. I was like, I'm officially, I was considering Strange New Worlds, and then I was like, nah, I'm done. And that to me would be a good. But one more thought on that. Closing thoughts on that.
Okay. It's like I said, we could debate who had the idea and why. At the end of the day, she was in it for a scene. So was Iggy Pop. Like
that's Iggy Pop.
So was Joe Piscopo.
Pop,
like,
no, I know, but like I'm saying, like Iggy Pop, Joe Piscopo, those are entertainers. Like you got a politician on there that is a clear. And see, like my thing, and we can seg into old Trek because I feel like I want to talk about the movies a little bit. The way that Trek would always kind of present issues they would have, like for example, the TOS episode where you've got Frank Gorshin and some other dude, and they're, they got the face painted one way, and like, so society, like the problems that we face in modern society, we're always, like I said, we're always reflected through, other planets, other cultures, and things like that. But they always the Federation always kind of served as like a neutral arbiter between these, and you kind of like, you thought about the situation based on two opposing viewpoints, and you were kind of able to make your decision based on that. It might be a centrist decision, it might be like towards the left, towards the right, you don't know, but like they lay it out through other cultures, other societies. That to me was just an egregious, like, all right, we've got the reins now, we're taking control of the narrative, like y'all, like, so that's how I felt about that.
Okay, well, I mean, look, it's maybe I'm definitely not here to fight about Star Trek.
No, I don't want to fight. I'm just, I'm
I
saying,
think you aren't either. So
no. I'm just saying, like, how would somebody feel about that? Like, I don't.
Well, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of identify the problem, identify the solution. So I will put it back on you. What would you have done?
I wouldn't. Like I said, to me, Star Trek has, while having political themes, has always been apolitical or politically neutral.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't think so?
It's, again, it changed with the times, and it, again, the folks that are behind the scenes pull the trigger, and we're looking at stuff like, being more inclusive and, talking, letting some of the narratives of the day really unfold in this serialized, this new serialized narrative. And, looking at that, we see stuff that, we see stuff from different points of view. If it's if one person's, always, if you're really into Picasso, you don't stop other people from painting. So it's kind of like, okay, you know what? This person is coming from a different perspective, a different background, has different ideas. We've kind of, again, Discovery was very experimental. It was Star Trek, so it was going to make money, but they had the liberty to kind of like, okay, you know what? We can do some things that they did, in the movies and kind of make it have that sort of feel. And, we can put this person or that person into this role or that role and really let this thing unfold. And seeing the progression, again, not only in society at large, but look, they're making a product for a customer.
Yeah.
How has that customer base changed over the years? There's numbers, I was like, okay, so we're seeing these trends, and you know what? This is where our fan base is going. It may not have to do with morality at all. It could just be, hey, look, this is what our customer base was. This is what they are now. And this is what other things that they are watching. This is what they're watching. So if we make this product a little bit like this one and a little bit like that one, we're going to reach wider. I mean, that's business. That's just business.
So no, I wanted to talk about the original series movies.
Before we get into that, let me just say, I feel people may be, oh, he's a Star Trek apologist. No, you can ask your lovely host here. I'll skewer Star Trek in a heartbeat, man. There's stuff that doesn't work for me.
Without going into too much detail about it, what would some of those things be?
Well, since I'm covering Enterprise right now on my show, Computer Resume Podcast, available now wherever you get your podcast. What I have seen is a step in the right direction when they should have jumped with both feet.
I agree.
Especially in terms of
Strange New Worlds.
I'm sorry?
Strange New Worlds?
Oh, no. Of Enterprise.
Oh, okay.
Scott Bakula. So we're going back a little bit. But, seeing how some of these, seeing how some of those episodes are structured, it's like, oh, man, they kind of took, if they had done this, this, and this, the vibe that they're going for would have hit so much harder. I think I may have mentioned it with you. I know I've mentioned it more than once on the show. There's a bunch of those episodes that actually play like horror movies, which is a lot of fun.
Of original TOS episodes. And Wrath of Khan is like when they're walking around Regular One, that's terrifying,
Oh yeah. But in looking at that, when you've got when you have that in mind, I always hope that, you went so far, but you could go so much further. It's like you took 2 steps. Could you have taken 4?
Yeah.
And again, it's foolish of me to think that making television is easy, because it's not. No. The fact that anything sees the light of day is just shy of a miracle. Really,
it is a miracle. I have stuff that is on the back burner that I don't know. Maybe it'll get produced someday. I don't know.
Hey, yeah, it could happen. It could happen.
Yeah. So let's talk about OG Trek movies.
Okay.
So, how was it? Like, did you find that? Were you watching the original series, Next Generation, and then those came into your existence?
I think I really started with TNG.
Okay.
Because I was born in 83, so probably after its initial run, probably in reruns. I think I may have watched it. It may have been first run, because I was maybe 4 or 5, and that would have put me right around 87. So maybe I watched it.
I remember I don't know. My first exposure to Star Trek was my mom rented Star Trek 4 for us because it was a really popular movie at the time.
Yeah.
But here I am, like, I'm dropped into this, and I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So I was kind of familiar with some of the characters, but I'm like, this isn't the Starship Enterprise. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. Yeah. I think in looking at, how I came to it was very much introduced. My my parents weren't big on sci-fi. I was really the only kind of sci-fi interested kid amongst my three brothers.
Okay.
So it was kind of up to me. So it wasn't an all the time thing. Oh, it's Star Trek, I gotta watch Star Trek, but it was frequent. I definitely watched it more frequently. And then at some point, probably around the same time, you kind of through osmosis, learn of, the other crew, and you start to get glimpses of them in pop culture. And then usually a movie on TV, in my case, was in regular rotation Sunday afternoons, between Sunday morning service and Sunday evening service. But looking at that, I think I probably was introduced to Wrath of Khan first in terms of the movies, mostly because that was probably the most popular and easily accessible for people. Because
more than 4, you think so?
Yeah, probably.
Really?
It's widely regarded as, it's widely regarded as
it's my
the
favorite.
Crown jewel of the TOS films.
No, it's my personal favorite, but like as far as accessibility to the franchise, everybody talks about the one with the whales. You know what I'm saying? Everybody knows that one.
True. I think that concept might be a little heady for the average viewer. And I think when you're talking about studios or networks, again, making a product for a customer, that's something that you look at. Now, again, that was Leonard Nimoy. So
that's been the highest.
The dude's been wearing the pointy ears for us for a while, fellas. Let's just hand him the keys.
No, he's great. I love the films he directed, and I mean, to me, like Wrath of Khan, it's the crown jewel of Star Trek. It might be one of the best films I've ever seen. It's so set. It's set up perfectly. It's executed near flawlessly, and it's pitch perfect in its performances and special effects and all that, and it sets forth a trilogy of films. And it's, like they've got all the same continuity, and so I specifically have love for 2, 3, and 4 because it like I said, it's one long story. It's like a story arc of films.
They were designed as a trilogy. That's that was the big thing of it. I think it's well known that the original motion picture, was clearly a special effects heavy, model heavy endeavor, and it shows. It absolutely comes through on screen. Of course, if you've got the time, if you've got the money, why not? But to be honest, I recently got to see it in theaters, got to see the motion picture, of course, the most recent updated cleaned up
re-release. It's not bad.
The 40th anniversary, it's not bad. It could be better in terms of writing, and not necessarily writing, because the writing's on par with any episode of TOS.
I agree.
The problem is TOS episodes are 45 minutes and the motion picture is every bit of 2 hours.
It drags, but I find it to be more hypnotic at this point. I have a different appreciation for the film.
It was the 70s. You might not be far off.
I mean, they were trying to ape on the whole success of 2001 and make this really cerebral, heady sci-fi movie, which, as I've gotten older, I love slow burn films, and I love slow burn sci-fi, slow burn art house, horror. That to me is awesome. And it's a very, very slow burn. And I just think the more I watch it, the more I appreciate about it. I love those uniforms because they lasted one film and then you never see them ever again.
Yeah, never again. I think just the color palette was, I mean, to be fair, it was the 70s.
Right.
But, I think, in looking at it again of like, oh, yeah, that didn't really.
They look like pajamas, though. They look super comfy,
They do. They do look very comfortable.
So would you say 2 is your favorite?
Yeah, I think, and again, I think when I watch Wrath, I've taken to watching it on my birthday because as I've gotten older, seeing the aging Kirk of just kind of like, oh man, like I'm my better days are behind me.
Yeah,
It's on your
we're
birthday as
starting to
you get
get
older.
there.
Yeah, you start to get to that point in your life too. You're like, I feel you, man. This is rough. You almost instantly identify with Kirk, and it comes apparent very clear that they have a good way to, hey, like they're introducing them for the first time because
Right.
it was such an accessible movie. It was just kind of, and hey, here's so and so. He's not really emotional,
Right.
Here's the doctor. He's kind of a country bumpkin,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. And in looking at that, I think that's something to, okay, we've done it this way, and now we know we can do it this way.
Mhm.
And you start to, as you progress, as any artist progresses, you know you start to learn new tricks along the way, and oh, there's a better way to do X, and maybe if I just turn this thing a little bit, it's completely different. And so studios, movie makers, these movies were such big inspirations for a lot of people in the industry. uh you know you want to grow with them, and you kind of want to keep inspiring, and not everybody reaches the same that it did prior. I've talked a lot about Star Trek Enterprise. A lot of people don't want to admit that this is a 20-year-old show, and some of the things that they were doing on that show were thought of in a particular way at a particular time. Those episodes watch differently today. The stuff where T'Pol gets attacked, or the instance of Archer torturing someone.
That's pretty terrifying, actually.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
"Holy shit, they went there," you know?
Mhm. Oh yeah. And it's I've questioned on more recent episodes of, in terms of the Star Trek universe, how would someone view the Enterprise crew in the distant future? I mean, and the thing that I cited was, well, Will Riker clearly felt he could get some perspective, because that's how they, kind of structured that, of like, oh, Will Riker in this particular scenario is going to go get advice from the Enterprise crew. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But is he the only person that feels that way about the Enterprise crew? Like, are they seen as, just above pond scum? I mean, we're talking about Archer, who made an abundance of bad decisions,
Yeah.
with crew members who were pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So how are they viewed? They get moments of reference. They referenced Archer in, I think, one of the earlier episodes of Discovery, but his name
Oh,
is
yeah.
up there. His name is up there with the echelon,
Right,
and
right.
so I don't know. I think those are interesting aspects to be explored in terms of, Picard, and, to take it back into New Trek for a second. Um, to take that approach with Picard, you're looking at, you're looking at doing things a particular way, and then, there's, like I said, anything that sees the light of day is just shy of a miracle. Anything could change it at any time. But yeah, the edible's hitting me again.
I hear you, and it's probably a good time to wrap it up.
We haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet, man.
Oh, I didn't know if you wanted to keep going or not, but
Dude,
I'm thinking it might be a good idea to and it's winding down for me too. We could have some sort of roundtable Trek discussion,
sure.
with like
Yeah.
your friends. I could bring some people in here, and we can just kind of like we can a critical drinker kind of does this, where he kind of chronicles like the movie, and they kind of talk about it, and people like we talk about plot points and like things we like about scenes and stuff, so it'd be fun to do if you're ever
Yeah.
down.
I'm always down,
we can
man.
get the whole crew, and then just
Sure.
it'll
Yeah.
be dope, man. But Well, cool, man. Todd, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to plug? Any performances you got coming up, or obviously you've got a podcast?
Yeah, in case you just tuning in to the end of the episode, why? But yes, the Computer Resume podcast. I've mentioned it a few times throughout the show. Available now wherever you get your podcasts. Computer Resume podcast. We are covering the entire Star Trek franchise in chronological order, but we are looking at it through clear eyes, open hearts, or clear minds, open, whatever that is. But yeah, it's not really a review show. It's just kind of like, hey, how did this make you feel? What do you think about it juxtaposed with what's going on in current events? Or hey, what does this episode remind you of? So I've had a rotating lineup of comedians and personalities, much like wonderful host Mr. J Strickland.
You can see my episode on his podcast. Wait, the title was it was the one with the probe, and it was Enterprise, and they not probe, but they had the weapon, and Jeffrey Combs shows up, and
so dealing with the Andorians.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna have to pull up my
I know, I was gonna say
list here.
A terrible plug here.
I'm so
you'll have to forgive me though, because Enterprise was I watched it through once, and so I'm not as familiar with some of the episode titles.
Yeah, no. And to be honest, I've taken over my martial arts career and law enforcement training, I've taken my fair share of shots to the head. So
sure. What are you trying to say, man?
It was oh, here we go. So your episode, the podcast episode title is With a Little Help from My Friends.
Yes.
But the episode we actually talked about was Enterprise Season 3, Episode 13, Proving Ground.
That was it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
It's a good one.
Yeah, so check that out on Computer Resume podcast. Any open mics, any performances coming up, anything like that?
Head to Greenville Comedy for all the stuff happening in and around Greenville, South Carolina. You can also check out if for strictly for comedy, you probably want to head to I Did This Instead of Killing Myself.
David Baker.
Yes, Mr. David Baker. He's a good friend and has a really fun podcast talking about comedy and everything around it. So and he also hits the highlights of the local open mics and scenes.
He's been on this show.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I like him a lot.
I still got to go on his show.
Oh, you'll have a blast, man.
Yeah.
In terms of anything or anywhere else you can find me at cinema_shock on Twitter and Instagram, or cinemashock.net. If you like genre films, sci-fi, action, horror, those types of films, we pick usually a director, and we cover most of their career, but in excruciating detail.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we really get into the stories behind the story, everything you didn't hear on the DVD commentary. But it really is an examination of genre film history. And cool. Again, you can find that at cinema_shock or cinemashock.net. Or if you don't like Star Trek and you don't like genre films, but damn it, you were charmed by me, you can find me at Mr. Todd A. Davis on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and D&D Beyond.
Letterboxd, holy shit! I'll have to follow you on Letterboxd because I have a thing on there. I did a few reviews. So.
Nice. Letterboxd is a lot of fun.
Well, I'll post all your links here in the chat or in the comment section, the description, all that. Please follow Mr. Todd Davis on Computer Resume podcast and Cinema Shock and all his other social media outlets. And please, like I said, like, comment, share, subscribe, click on that bell for notifications. Mr. Todd Davis, thank you for joining us, sir.
Mr. Strickland, thank you so much, sir. I've
All
had an
right.
absolute blast.
And now we're going to do this outro screen. So I'm going to have it set up. Oh, shit. I can't. Oh, there we go. All right. And wait, hold on. This is a lot of fun. I'm going to have this set up better next time. Okay, guys. Namaste. Jobless. Live long and prosper. Be good. Get money. Get hoes.
Yeah, buddy. I groove to that, man.
End it. End.